Hi, I'm Tiffany. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are switching gears a little bit. Most of the time I primarily talk about books that I have been reading, but today I wanted to talk about homeschooling curriculums that are good fits for bookworms. So this video is for anyone who is currently homeschooling and maybe looking to switch up their homeschool curriculum, people who have young children and are looking to homeschool in the future, or people who are feeling a little discontent with the school that their child is currently attending and is maybe researching options to potentially homeschool in the future. I will say as an introduction here that a lot of the curriculums I'm going to be mentioned fall under the Charlotte Mason method, and Charlotte Mason was I believe 19th century educator who was really revolutionary for her time, and there are a lot of things that I love about the way that she taught. I will link a blog post down in the description that I wrote of why we love Charlotte Mason so much, but just as a Cliff Notes version, first of all, she views children as unique and individual people, not just these vessels to be filled or this cookie cutter mold, but that they are very unique and individualized people. She also was very literature based in her approach, so there's a lot of what is called living books, and these are books that rather than just textbooks with dry facts, they have really just amazing stories that make it come to life so the child can really make connections with what they're reading instead of just memorizing to a test. Along with these living books, there's what's called a feast of ideas, and most Charlotte Mason curriculums are very widespread and varied in what they present. So you're going to have the normal subjects like, language arts and history and science, but then you're also going to have like music appreciation, art appreciation, art lessons, nature study, literature, all these things that maybe aren't taught to younger children, but they're very prevalent in Charlotte Mason curriculums. Okay, so let's dive in. The first curriculum that I'm going to go over is Ambleside Online. Ambleside Online is actually the curriculum that we are currently using for the most part in our homeschool right now. It is a completely free curriculum, so you can look at it and it's going to cost you nothing to look at it. And it's got a plan of what books to read when, and it's detailed out that way. You do have to buy the books, but most of the books that they choose are actually free online that you can get Kindle versions of, so it's a very economical choice. Ambleside Online uses a lot of older books, which is something that I personally really love because I'm a huge fan of classics. But if you struggle with the language in classics, it may not be for you, so you may want to preview it. But if you do try it out, I encourage you to give it a chance, because books that for us were really kind of difficult to read at first ended up becoming books that we really, really loved. I will also say that this curriculum is a bit advanced. So for example, right now Claire is in 3rd grade, but we are doing year 2, and this is our first year doing Ambleside Online. I believe that they say on their website that if your child completes 10th grade, then they will have been considered to have a very good high school education, even if they don't get to years 11 and 12. So it's a very, very thorough curriculum, very deep. And that is something I really love about it. Like, we're talking that they have kids studying Shakespeare and Plutarch in 4th grade and reading books like Mere Christianity in 7th grade. So it's definitely very advanced in the way that it's reading. So if you put yourself down a year or two just to try it out, don't feel like your child is behind, because these years are not necessarily corresponding to grade levels. I would say one con of Ambleside Online that I can see is that I think it would be difficult to do if you have a lot of children. I have one child, so for me to do the readings is not a big deal. you are supposed to transition your child to be reading a lot of the materials themselves as the years go on, but as of right now, I read a lot of the books aloud to her, with the exception of 1 or 2 readings that I've given to her. Obviously, if you're reading aloud to a lot of children, that is going to take up so much of your day, so that would be kind of difficult. But if you have children in the same age range, you could actually group them together in the same year, and that kind of wouldn't be a big deal. The exams are really different in this, and that's going to be the same with a couple of the other curriculums that I mentioned. They're different in the way that there's no multiple choice, and it's not like you study and memorize dates just for the test. Charlotte Mason did something called narration, where you would read a reading, or the child would read it, and then they would tell you back what they learned from that. This enables children that instead of just memorizing dates for a history test, they actually make a connection to the material, and it kind of has like a long-lasting effect on them, not only in the connections that they can then make with that historical event with other events, but also just they're going to remember it more, and it's going to have a greater impact on them. If you want to know more about narration, I cannot recommend enough Know and Tell by Karen Glass. This book really helped me when we were just starting out narration, and I felt like we just weren't getting it, so definitely recommend this. The next curriculum I am going to recommend is Simply Charlotte Mason. It is, you guessed it, a Charlotte Mason curriculum. This is very similar to Ambleside Online, but I feel like some of the books are more modern. The readings aren't as challenging. I've noticed that some of the books that they do in Simply Charlotte Mason were done in Ambleside Online a couple years prior, so it's definitely a little bit more laid back, and a lot of the subjects are designed for families, which is amazing. So you will have one history reading for all the children in your family, and then each certain grade level has different things that they do outside of that. So, you know, older children are going to be reading more in depth. We did Simply Charlotte Mason history and geography last year, and we are continuing geography this year because we just absolutely love it. I will say that for us, the book cost was a bit prohibitive. So just keep that in mind, that some of the books can be kind of pricey. If you were using this for a bunch of different children, if you have like 3 kids or more, or even 2 kids or more, that you are doing this together with them, you're actually spending a lot less on books. So I can see it actually being cost saving in that way, but for us with just 1 child, it wasn't. The next curriculum to recommend is Sonlight. I actually have never used Sonlight, but it is very literature based. So if your kids love books, they would probably like Sonlight. And Sonlight also has a lot of book lists, and it's very open and go. So it tells you exactly what you need to be reading every day. So that can be really helpful when you're starting out and you're not really sure what you're doing. Sonlight, I believe, is all-inclusive with the exception of math, so you would need to purchase the math separately. And actually, just as a heads up, that's the same for Simply Charlotte Mason and Ambleside Online. The one thing I've heard that is not a plus for Sonlight is that it is more time-consuming. So there's just more to do, more reading, so keep that in mind. The next curriculum is for littler ones, and that is 5 in a row. There's another curriculum that kind of, I want to say piggybacks off of it, but that's probably not the right term. It comes before, it's called Before 5 in a Row. So, and that's for preschool ages. So this curriculum is basically, you have one book that you're reading 5 days in a row, and it's a picture book. So you're reading this book 5 days in a row, and each day you have different activities and things that you do along with it. So it's kind of unit study based, but if your kid loves books, they will probably really enjoy this curriculum. The next curriculum I would recommend is The Good and the Beautiful, specifically their science and probably their history too. We've used their science, we have not used their history. Their science is wonderful. It has so much beautiful books to read. It has book lists included with every single curriculum, but in addition to that, they have mini books that you make that are just, they're just really pretty. So if your child likes being read aloud too, this is a good one. There's also lots of experiments and other things included as well. Another plus for The Good and the Beautiful is that it's very cost efficient. I believe each unit costs in the $30 range. It's not very much at all, and most of them have, I would say, 15 to 20 lessons in there. Some people do like 2 lessons a week. We do 1 and split it up over a couple of days usually, so it takes us a lot longer to get through it, so it lasts even longer. Like Simply Charlotte Mason, it was designed to be used with a family, so you can use this, I believe, ages usually kindergarten through 6th grade, and then sometimes they also have advanced projects for 7th and 8th grade to complete on top of that. So now let's get into some math curriculums. The first curriculum I'm going to mention is Master Books, Math Lessons for a Living Education. So these are math lessons and they are story-based. So it follows 2 siblings and just their adventures and kind of incorporates math along the way. These are workbooks, so they are not reusable. So keep that in mind. All the other curriculum that I have mentioned so far is reusable. So you can use it with one child, and if you have a child that's a few years younger, you can reuse the books, the tests, whatever. It's all reproducible. And this one is not. It's very inexpensive, which is nice. We used this with Claire during kindergarten, and actually it didn't really work for us because it included a lot of writing. I'm not so sure that would be such a big deal now that she's in 3rd grade, but it was not. She didn't like writing things at all, and so it just was very, very frustrating for her. It is a very gentle curriculum, so it's not as advanced as some math curriculums. Not that that's a bad thing, but just something to keep in mind that if your child is coming out of public school and they're, say, in like 3rd grade, they may actually be doing a 4th grade workbook through this curriculum. The other math curriculum I wanted to recommend is one that we're using right now, and it is our favorite, and that is Life of Fred. Life of Fred is also story-based, like Math Lessons for a Living Education. It follows a boy named Fred, and he is 5 years old, but he is a math professor at a university. He's a complete genius. And oh boy, are these books funny. I enjoy them just as much as Claire does. Math used to be such a struggle in our house, but since we switched to Life of Fred, it's not. It's amazing and it's great. She looks forward to reading it and oftentimes wants to do more than 1 chapter. So the way that it works is you read the chapter, and then at the end it has a thing called Your Turn to Play, and it has these problems that the child then answers, and a lot of times, depending on what skill they're working on, after that it has a row of practice with 5 or 6 problems that they need to complete. Right now Claire is doing like multiple column addition and subtraction with borrowing and carrying, and she's also beginning multiplication. So all of those are part of her row of practice. Another really fun thing about Life of Fred is it actually goes over things other than math. So the chapter that we just read actually has to do with alliteration. So it talks about that, and it talks about street names that Fred is on. I think it's Lizard Lane is a pet store that he's going to. So then it goes through like avenues, boulevards, drives, and has the kids come up with their own alliterative names, which is really fun. These are reusable. They don't have room for you to write the answers to the problems, so you have a separate notebook. Each book, I believe, is like $16, and you're supposed to, I believe, go through like 2 books a year or something like that. You can actually get a pretty good deal if you buy them the entire elementary set all together. It ends up being a lot cheaper, and that's what we did. And we love this curriculum. It is so much fun. At the beginning, there are not a lot of practice problems, which could be really good. So you could use that time instead to play math games or work on other things, or you may want to supplement, and we have done that in the past with a different curriculum called Math Mammoth, which is not story-based. So not necessarily a great curriculum for a bookworm, but works for us. And the last curriculum that I want to talk about if your child loves books is Brave Writer. Brave Writer was founded by Julie Bogart in, I believe, the early-ish 2000s. There are a number of different components of Brave Writer that you can use. They actually have online classes, which we have never done. They have creative writing curriculums, which we have really enjoyed. But the one that I really wanted to talk about is their literature guides. So they have different age ranges. They have the Dart, which I believe is for first and second graders, the Arrow, which is, I believe, third through fifth graders, and then they have a middle school option, and then they have some for high school as well, called the Boomerang. Each of these guides is based on a book. So for example, one that we recently did was Poppy. So we would read through this book, and then there were copywork passages based on the chapters. They're excerpts from the chapters. Copywork is basically when a child sees the passage and then they copy it in their neatest handwriting. So for some children that may mean they do a word a day. For some children it may mean they do a line a day. For some children they can do the whole passage in one day depending on the length. And that's just going to depend on your child, how long they can keep up their neatest handwriting for. While your child is copying that passage, they are not only working on their penmanship, but they are also practicing spelling, and there are lessons that you can teach off each copywork passage on punctuation, grammar, and other things like that. We have read so many amazing books through this, and we love it. It is a really gentle and wonderful way to learn different language arts things and grammar, and it's amazing. It is something that you can use for multiple age ranges, so you could read a book like an Arrow book and read it to your fifth grader, your second grader, and your first grader. And you could have them all copy different lengths of the passage just according to their ability, so you can really easily tweak it. At the end of each guide, there is a literary element that they're focusing on that is prevalently found in that book. So again, this one for an example, they used onomatopoeia for this because there's a lot of descriptions of noises and things in nature. You're talking about this literary element as you're reading the book. At the end, there is a writing project to go along with this literary element that they've learned. The newer guides also have book club party ideas, which is fun to do with your family, or if you're reading this book with other people, then you can have a party with all these other people too, which is really fun. It gives food ideas, game ideas, like all kinds of cool stuff. It's super fun. With Brave Writer, you can purchase a year's worth of curriculum, and it's like 10 different guides. Or you can go and purchase just one or two to try them out, or that way you can choose the titles that you want, which is mostly what I have done. I did do the years-long curriculum this year, and it's the first year I have done it. Each guide ranges from $10 to I think $15, so they're not very expensive. It's meant to take you about 4 weeks to get through, but depending on the length of the copywork passages, it could take you more or less. These are reusable, so what you're using for an older child now can very easily be recycled if you have younger children that you will be using this on in the future. So yes, these are my curriculum recommendations if you have a bookworm child, or if you're a bookworm. If you guys love to read together, all of these curriculums are really, really wonderful options. If you are a homeschooler, or if you're looking to homeschool, I would love to chat with you in the comments about what curriculum you're using or any questions that you may have. If you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.